Good morning and welcome back to United TV. This morning, the talk is all about ROGERS, about Rafael LEAO. Manchester United are prioritising a left wing signing after fixing midfield, and Manchester United have made Morgan ROGERS their number one target. He might be one of the more expensive targets, and we have discussed this over recent weeks, but this news isn't going to go away. And if anything, there seems to be stronger links this morning than ever. Also, to discuss other options as well is that this story as well, I'm not so keen on Rafael LEAO, but this story is not going away anyway, so we'd have to talk about it. But Morgan ROGERS is their first choice. Their backup choice might well be Rafael LEAO. They did scout him very recently, and he hasn't been in fantastic form, but it would be probably potentially half the price. I don't know exactly how much Aston Villa would hold out for, but you probably feel at least 80 million. I think 100 million is too much, so when they're talking half the price, it's probably 50 instead of 80. So Rafael LEAO is definitely on the list. And in terms of like what Manchester United looked at trying to do the deal, this may possibly involve Marcus Rashford going to Villa, but there's again a lot to discuss regarding him and Barcelona. Also, these are probably potentially the three targets. If you take out Diamonde, who I think might be considered a bit too young for this season, you got Rafael LEAO and Morgan ROGERS, a couple of Premier League options, and the cheaper option being the player Rafael LEAO from Serie A. That might be potentially where Manchester United look at doing deals, and it probably comes down to whether Aston Villa actually want the very top price. It might be difficult then, but that's why Manchester United might be exploring some swap deals. Just a little bit more before we go into this and take your comments, is that Manchester United, looking at Rafael LEAO, there could be potentially three different players involved in a swap deal. So we're not talking about just Marcus Rashford. We're also talking about Agate. We're also talking about Xerxes. And those two players are heavily linked to a move to Serie A. So potentially, if you're looking at Rafael LEAO, I'm not massively keen on Rafael LEAO. I think Agate would give you at least half that fee covered, and Xerxes probably more than that. So you're looking at 25 million minimum for Agate, probably another 10 million, 5 to 10 million at least for Xerxes. So potentially there could be some sort of deal involving those players. And again, Manchester United are looking to move those players out of the club. That's almost going to happen regardless of whether they're involved in any sort of deal. But this is the key story. Manchester United have made ROGERS their number one target for left wing this summer. And according to a few reports, Michael Carrick is actually personally involved as well. This is quite a bit similar to maybe the Hayden Hackney story we talked about, I think, yesterday or the day before, where he's another player that's linked to Manchester United. There's a good understanding of what he can bring to the team. And I think there's also a good understanding that Morgan ROGERS is not forcing his way out of Aston Villa. This is mainly Aston Villa wanting to cash in. So this isn't Morgan ROGERS wanting to leave. This is Aston Villa deciding they want to cash in, despite they're probably going to get Champions League football, and despite the club's actually doing okay in the league, they want to cash in to then reinvest the money. So this is an Aston Villa decision, and I think Manchester United, there's a deal to be done here if they really see this. If they really see this player as their top target, I think there is a deal to be done. I think the Marcus Rashford deal might be very unlikely with Aston Villa, but you never know. I didn't think we'd see Marcus Rashford go to Aston Villa a year ago, so anything's possible at this point in the season. So I said I'll jump into the comments. So we'll take people's opinions regarding this one. If you are able to share the stream during the live, that would be fantastic as well. And say, yeah, hopefully it goes all right, Jim. Hopefully it goes all right with the dentist. So let's go for people's comments as well. So if you've got some comments and thoughts on your preferred target regarding ROGERS and LEAO, for me, ROGERS is a much preferred target. But again, it's going to be quite expensive. I think we have to accept that. I don't really mind players being moved out as part of swap deals. I think that's perfect, but it is quite difficult to do. I think Manchester United did move. Now we saw Lindelof and we saw Sancho go to Aston Villa, but last transfer window there was no Aston Villa players we actually got. So again, maybe it's going to be quite difficult because a lot of things have got to work out, and they, as Cody said, they're quite difficult to do. They're talked about a lot, but they're actually quite difficult to try and do that one because I think if we tried to do a swap deal last year and we were seriously interested in maybe going for their striker, or we were going for maybe Emi Martinez, the goalkeeper. So we could have possibly done something last season if we are looking to do a swap deal with Villa. But I think at this point, I think Aston Villa are probably, they would be interested in Rashford, but I think this would be Rashford not actually interested. And so Rashford complicating our window again. it's a combination of things, isn't it? Rashford wants to go to Barcelona. Barcelona are trying to get a lower deal on Rashford. It kind of complicates things a little bit, but I don't think it means that Manchester United, and I don't think it puts Man United off getting Rodgers. They'd still see him as the player they want to sign. I think it just makes it a little bit easier financially. And don't we need to sell Xerxes for around 27 to 30 million, or a lost money, or was that this? I think probably Manchester United didn't pay loads for Xerxes. They probably almost certainly haven't paid the add-ons for Xerxes. So I think Xerxes, 27 to 30 might have been last year's price. Like, I don't think Man United need to sell Xerxes for much at all. If we bought him for, if you're thinking in pounds, probably we didn't pay much more than 30 million anyway. Like the price we paid for that was quoted was probably in euros. So I don't think there's actually a lot. We don't need to bring in a lot of money to avoid a loss on Xerxes, but also the financial rules have changed and Manchester United are making profit. So I don't think it's the biggest problem, to be honest. Natasha said, I thought United were going for best in class. Who would you like then, Natasha? But if you're looking at, if you don't like them, like Rogers and Diamonde and I Rafa Leao are the only sort of options I've seen that have been discussed a lot. And so, how many goals has Rogers scored? How many from open play? I'm guessing Rogers doesn't take penalties, does he? But I think he scored about 9 goals this season, as far as I'm aware. So he's one that I think Morgan Rogers definitely had a bit of a run where he scored quite a few goals. So there was definitely a purple patch this season where Rogers was hitting form. It's not been quite so good recently, and it's maybe coincided a little bit with Aston Villa dropping off a bit as well. But no, I think he's got 9 goals, and I think that's probably comparable to our forwards at the moment. I think Benjamin Sesko has got 10 in the league, hasn't he? Or 9 or 10. I think Cunha and Buemo might be not far behind. So I think he's got the same amount of goals as our front three. So similar with that, which again puts him in line. So this is what he's got. Okay, so if you can, maybe I might have been thinking Premier League, but if you look at all competitions, then Rodgers is up there in terms of like comparable with our players. Also, 23 years old, younger player than Mbuemo and Cunha. Not for me. For me, he's a good player, but I think it's a lot of money. If you're looking at a comparison between Rodgers and Rafa Leao, I favour not Rafa Leao. I favour Rodgers a lot, even though Rafa Leao would be significantly cheaper. I think he's a better player. He's yeah. So I was quoting Premier League just to compare because we don't have European football. So to compare him with our players, I think he scored the same amount of goals as either Cunha and Buemo Sesko. I think they're all on roughly about 9 goals. I think Rodgers is performing the same level, but also significant competition. So I know someone mentioned in the chat there's mentions about Armadillo, who's not performing that well, but hopefully he can improve next season as well. But I think Rodgers does represent one of the best options in the league at the moment, and does seem to have a good attitude. He doesn't want to leave Aston Villa. He's not going to make any drama. He scored 2 very good goals against us as well, which is yeah. Sometimes it seems to be a coincidence. Sometimes I notice that Manchester United do seem to look at players that do very well against them as potential signings. So I'm not saying that that's a reason, but yeah, it kind of sticks in the mind. He did score 2 extremely good goals, and it did turn the game in Villa's favour against us. So potentially that's something Manchester United are looking at. I don't think it's the main reason. I think they see Rodgers as an opportunity. He's 23 years old. He actually worked with Michael Carrick at Middlesbrough. So now, potentially, and again, this isn't just because he played for Middlesbrough, but Michael Carrick will have a good understanding of what the player was capable of before he joined Aston Villa. I think the same way as Hayden Hackney, you see 2 players that are just getting better. So when I was talking about Hayden Hackney as £30 million, I think you have to look at it as if we don't get Hayden Hackney signed this season, he's probably going to be a 40, 45, £50 million signing relatively quickly. So these transfers, a bit of Premier League experience really transforms the value of it as well. Welcome Brill to the chat. Actually, when I said I've got a guest that's from Croatia, she'll be on tomorrow evening UK time about 8 p.m. So 8 p.m. Sorry, 7 p.m. tomorrow evening. I'll have a couple of guests. One's from Croatia. She's a really good guest, and I haven't spoken to her for ages, so I'll be asking her all these questions. But we're probably going to be previewing the Liverpool game in that one, depending on what news breaks. But probably looking at the Liverpool game as much as anything else. But no, so I think there is actually quite a few comparisons between Rafa Leao and Rashford. which make people put off a little bit. I think it's like there's an attitude issue. There's definitely a disconnect with the fans at the moment with Rafael Leao. There's been a combination of not very good performances and probably also lack of form, injuries. That I would say there's a reason why Rafael Leao is getting priced cheaper, and I think it's a bit of a concern that Manchester United are considering him. So I think with you looking at these two players, I think Rafael Leao is the sort of player that if you'd have signed him 2 to 3 years ago, yeah, Stephanie says way too much money. You would have preferred some menu, but that ship has sailed. Yeah, I think some menu was talked about in terms of if you remember some menu, he was talked about as £100 million signing, I think in August, but they had that release clause which we didn't realise at the time for 65. So I think Rogers has been discussed at possibly 80 for Aston Villa. Like, could this stance? If you think about Manchester United's pay structure recently and how much we're paying for players, maybe we could be looking at a similar sort of deal. I don't think Rodgers should be more than Semenyo. I mean, Aston Villa don't. Aston Villa seem to want to sell, which is a good thing. There seems to be maybe one or two clubs interested in Rodgers, but the price is going to maybe put off a lot of teams. But when you start going to that sort of price, yeah, it opens up any sort of player in the world that could potentially be around. So I think it's going to be difficult to get the deal done for that sort of price for Aston Villa. If you look at Semenyo money, then which was quite similar to Mbeumo, I think that's probably that sounds for me that sounds about fair. I think Semenyo was a little bit older as well. He should cost a little bit more. It's for me it's Aston Villa do put high prices on their players, and they probably got some targets lined up to replace him. I don't think necessarily Rashford's the most likely. I think the most likely is probably going to be with Rashford is that Manchester United might eventually have to negotiate with Barcelona because at the moment that might be the easiest thing. If you're looking again, this is probably a side conversation, but would you take a slightly lower offer from Barcelona just to get this wrapped up? But there's still a long way to go. It's only April still, but if Barcelona offer you very slightly less than whatever was agreed, is it worth just going right? Because Rashford's salary is going to go up 20-25%. It's the salary's on the books. He's not going to play for Manchester United. It's just a bit annoying, isn't it? As Andy says, the players still have to want to come to us. So, according to every source linked to Rogers as well, Rogers is more than happy to join Manchester United. He's happy to join Manchester United, but he's not. No, he's not pushing for a move away from Villa Park either. So, this for me is very similar to the Mbeumo situation last season, where there's nothing from Rogers in terms of wanting to leave. This is that down to the club looking to cash in. Rogers would be happy to join Manchester United. I think apparently Rogers just wants to play for a club that's in the Champions League. I think Aston Villa will be there next season. I think Manchester United are going to be there next season as well. So there's for me there's no problem with that. Like Rogers just isn't causing any drama. So I think no, I quite like that. And we'll have to see how Rogers does in the next few games and see whether these links actually affect him at all. But no, and Yanni says, if there's an attitude problem with a player, United are not looking at them, even when we say we are. Look how fast Garnacho was thrown out. No, there's definitely, I think a line's been drawn in the sand. And if you look at it, like Yardi's right, if there's a player with an attitude problem, they're not going to be considered. So if Rafa Leao's got an attitude problem, people told me last year that they thought Cunha had an attitude problem. And I think Cunha's attitude has been excellent. So, since he's been a Manchester United player, I think his attitude has been perfect. He loves Manchester United. He's putting in maximum effort every single game, working hard for the team. So I think Cunha is one of those signings that definitely we got right. Lamans is another one. Great attitude, maybe a perfect mentality for a goalkeeper as well. And I think the attitude we've seen of other players in the team and Buemo's attitude as well has been very good, despite despite lack of form. You can't argue that he's motivated. He's trying his best for the team, and I think this is definitely something. There's been a culture shift, and that's why Rashford's never going to kick a ball for Manchester United. So if you're not dedicated and your heart's not in the right place, you're not motivated, then you're not going to be considered. So I think United are definitely looking at. So if there is serious question marks over Rafa Leao, and to be honest, I've seen people say that. I don't know. Obviously, we don't know Rafa Leao personally. It could be other factors, but if he has got an attitude issue, he won't even be considered as well. Debassis, so yeah, I don't think we should be. I don't think we should be handing out the number seven to people. To be honest, Cake says centre back in midfield. So yeah, like Cake. Honestly, like midfield is the priority. It is the priority, absolutely by far. Like it is the priority. But I think you got to look at also Manchester United are going to be replacing. If you look at it, we are replacing Rashford, Anthony, and Sancho still, and we haven't really replaced those. We got more attacking tens, but we do need some width as well. And I think over the course of the season, you have to look at our situation at the moment and say we're kind of down to the bare bones as an attack force. We've got no backup striker. We kind of move Cunha and Buemo into the striker position sometimes when Sesko's not playing, and we do need someone that can play on in the attack. And also, maybe this is potentially cover when like for Bruno can't start every single game either. So maybe you're looking at Cunha, Bruno, Rogers. There's a few players there that do actually carry a goal threat as well. So I think also United need to look at bulking up the squad anyway. Look how many players that Manchester City have for certain positions. Like you need to have these players over, and it's not necessarily about forcing players out of the team or who's on the bench. It's also covering injuries and suspensions, and we don't have any cover for those. So regardless of who your first team player is, you need to get a lot of people to for a squad. So it's ridiculous, isn't it? It is ridiculous. But I know, I think that the Barcelona situation, I don't want to talk about it because it's so annoying, really. And so, how much would kudos be? I mean, if Spurs get relegated, we could be talking about, yeah, talking about different situation. To be honest, when the whole transfer window is wrapped up and we see these deals happen, if Manchester United get a left winger, but they also get a left back and they also get midfielders, I think people will be probably relatively happy. As long as we get three midfield players in, I think I would be thinking, okay, at least we're addressing the biggest issue in our team. But maybe this is the sort of signing that probably goes under the radar a little bit in terms of importance. But when you fast forward to a Premier League season and a Champions League season, and you're looking at running out of players, you've kind of got to look at it and go, actually, you need some depth. So Andy says, can't keep letting Barcelona get away with games. I know. To be honest, like some of this is Manchester United's own doing by giving Rashford a contract, which makes it very difficult to move him on. But and also Rashford's picking just Barcelona, so it's literally impossible, isn't it? So um, I mean, yeah, no, I was just thinking, I don't know where Rashford goes, but I'm sure he goes to Barcelona eventually, and it's going to be the most drawn out signing we've ever seen. It's going to be so frustrating. It's the same with everything associated with Barcelona. Morning, Genghis. Welcome to the conversation. If we shell out on Rodgers, it might mean we're selling Bruno and moving Cunha into the 10 position because there's no way we're going to pay 80 million for a bench option winger. Then this is like, okay, in terms of Rodgers and where would Rodgers play, Rodgers is pretty much stated as well, and people close to Rodgers have said that he's happy to play anywhere on the left, anywhere centrally, but he's not going to be an option on the right. So Manchester United would have Mbeumo and Almujal on the right. So you would feel that Mbeumo wouldn't be playing centrally again. This could be, it feels expensive, but it could be an option and also in terms of replacing Bruno. But if you're looking at multiple games a week, then maybe Rodgers is starting. I mean, Cunha doesn't always start, and Cunha cost 62 million, and he roughly about that sort of price. So no, I think it could be that cake, but it could be that he's got an opportunity to win a starting position anyway. And if Manchester United are looking to try and at least have some competition, so So yeah, but also it depends. It depends. Like if Michael Carrick's actually a factor in this, then he's got some idea, and presumably Michael Carrick is looking at being possibly the head coach next season still. So he's probably thinking he's got a very good chance. And this would be another deal where you think that whatever happens, you feel like Manchester United are going to be playing 4-2-3-1 or 4-3-3. Maybe they're looking at 4-3-3 situations as well, thinking maybe we need a bit more width as well. I think it's different with the way United have been playing recently, and maybe they are looking at trying to get some wingers back into the squad. No, I'd say that Rodgers isn't necessarily as wide as we'd look at in terms of natural wingers, but I think it's a versatility thing as well. I think it depends if you're putting if you're putting Rodgers into a Manchester United team, maybe they're looking at something different as well. So maybe they're looking at it's not necessarily going to be looking at playing the same way it did for Aston Villa. So looking at this, because I saw this, I saw you said, what was your key target, Natasha? Because you were saying that you don't think Manchester United are looking at potentially the best options available. Would Diamonde represent one of the better ones? Andy says, in your show last season, they bought the right players, and say this season they've got to show that they can sell players because you can't just do one thing. I think with this one, do you think that the issue is going to be that there's a few players Manchester United looking to sell this season. And if you look at the transfer situation last year, the ones that are difficult to sell are going to be people like Sancho, people like Rashford. They're just on very high salaries. So they're quite difficult to sell. And maybe we can look at, regarding sales, maybe we can judge Manchester United on what happens with Ugarte, what happens with Xerxes. They're two players on moderate salaries that don't have high transfer fees. They've been at Manchester United for a couple of years. We don't have to sell them for big money to balance the books, but we should be looking to try and sell them for as much as possible. So I would say maybe the best thing to judge Manchester United on sales wise is how much money do we get for Ugarte? How much money do we get for Xerxes? Because there's clubs that want them. They're, no, they do have demand from Serie A teams. There is potentially a few clubs after each player, and the salaries are not incredibly high. So if Manchester United need to be judged, I think any club would struggle with Rashford because he's on over 100, like 300k a week. It's going to be quite difficult. The salary is going to put off a lot of teams in certain leagues. It's probably it is actually pushing the price down. So players on sensible salaries. If Manchester United can sell Agati and Xerxes for decent money, that will be an indication. But again, I think it's easier to sell players. How old is Rogers now? Rogers is 23, isn't he? So 23 years old for Rogers. I think Rogers represents like the kind of the sort of signing that Ineos want to make. Because if you're looking at Rogers costing a lot of money, the idea is that if you get Rogers at 23, then he improves at 24, 25. If you think about it, Marcus Rashford is 5 years older than Rogers, and you could argue that Rashford didn't really improve loads from like 23, 24 over the last few years. Probably had his best season about 2 to 3 years ago, where he got 30 plus goals. But since then, I know it's difficult with Rashford because you think injuries have maybe hampered his game a little bit. I mean, I would say Morgan Rogers being compared to Rashford, but not identical players. I mean, Rashford had a very good finish, very, very fast player in his prime. But I think Rogers has got development to do. Like Rogers is definitely an interesting player. He's definitely improving, but at 23, I think this is kind of the perfect age where Aston Villa look to cash in. Manchester United are hoping that he can improve a lot. And players at 23, it's kind of like Man United constructing a younger team. So we're just looking at we're looking at moving on people, getting a younger team, getting a younger squad. So I think that the squad's moving in the right direction as well. Again, I think when you look at the transfer window, I remember last season I was like saying, I know how people say this season we need to get a midfield, we need to get a midfield. And last season I was banging on about getting a goalkeeper for the whole transfer window, and we did that deal right at the end of the summer. So hopefully the midfield players will get signed a bit earlier. But there's going to be one deal that happens later in the summer, I'm sure, and I think fans are going to get frustrated. Like if Man United announce a couple of signings and they're not midfield player signings, I think people will get frustrated and think, actually, what's going on? Like, where's the midfield signings? But I think you have to make a midfield signing quite early just to kind of get the ball rolling. But if United don't sign a midfield player and they sign, if they did sign Rodgers and then they did sign potentially another non-midfield player, I'd be surprised. I think the midfield player is going to be one of the first couple of signings, and I still think it's going to be possibly Belieber. Apparently, there's some breaking news that's going to be announced tonight at 8 p.m. So I'm not sure how I'll plan for the 8 p.m. stream because apparently there's going to be breaking news of Manchester United potentially putting in an offer for a player of about 70 million. I'm guessing it's a midfield player. If I was going to guess, I'd probably guess Belieber because that seems to be about the price that has been talked about. But I don't know. I might have to make a thumbnail with like a player that's just a silhouette and deal with it that way. But myself and Kieran will be talking about this tonight. So hopefully there's some sort of update on social media. But it looks like there's a £70 million bid about to go in from Manchester United or be on the table for when the transfer window opens. So Now, potentially something's happening, and maybe we're going to find out quite soon. But it just shows that things are going to start clicking into gear quite soon, hopefully. What is the best? So I did go through the story, and when we consider the options, are people looking at these options thinking, if you had to pick one, is there any name that stands out? You could probably throw Diamonde in there, but he's going to be even more expensive and less experienced. So potentially that would be a bit of a stretch. Because when I look at this list, I'd be interested to know exactly how much Ndiaye costs because I think he could be potentially quite good. He looked pretty good running with the ball through us when he's playing for Everton, and I think in a more attacking team, he might kick on a bit as well. So I think I'd rule out Rafa Leao at this point. If we're linked to Rafa Leao for much longer, I'm going to be pretty disappointed. I don't think Rafa Leao seriously is a consideration for Manchester United. I think it's almost like just doing your due diligence, picking what players, seeing what players are out there, and then going right. Actually, no, we don't want Rafa Leao. So I don't think Rafa Leao is a serious candidate. So yeah, I think there's a combination of things, Gregory. I don't know. I couldn't really put my finger on one thing and say this is what's happened with Marcus Rashford, but whatever happened, it's kind of like it's not going to come back, is he? Andy says, I would love us to get the bargain players first, then go for the bigger players. Who do you consider a bargain player? Is this going to be something like an Angela Stiller, or is it going to be maybe look? If you're looking at a bargain player, I think maybe João Gomez is one that you could be looking at. That could be one player that you get quite early on. Maybe you could look at. I suppose it depends how much Alex Scott costs, how much if West Ham get relegated, how much Fernandez costs. Yeah, there's literally there's a few options there that you could go cheaper. Hayden Hackney at 30 million could be that one. That could be that deal. I'm getting to saying a proper three-man midfield with Scott in it makes us less reliant on Bruno, and so you need to start planning for life after Bruno, over reliance on him. I thought Mathis Cunha could have been, no, it could have been. I mean, Stephanie, we're on the same wavelength. When I think of bargain players, those are probably the three names that come to mind. I mean, the Angela Stiller one, we guessed the price will be about 50. I think the other two are going to be pretty much Gomez is 35, isn't he? 40. And I think Hayden Hackney is only about 30. So when it comes to bargain players, I think those are the options, aren't they? Yeah, I think that was the preparation. I think that was the preparation for Bruno replacement. But then if they're thinking like Bruno gets replaced by Cunha, are they thinking that Rodgers then replaces Cunha? So is this going to be a situation where Manchester United look at it like life beyond Bruno? You have to get Bruno's replacement in before Bruno leaves, don't you? So at the moment, it seems to be a bit up in the air about whether Bruno Fernandes will 100% be a Manchester United player next season. And I think the reasons why he might not be might be down to if he doesn't think Manchester United can win the Premier League, he might be gone. So there has been stories recently saying that he wants assurances or he wants Manchester United to show they're serious or to show Manchester United they're moving in the right direction. I think is what Bruno needs to see. But again, I think if Manchester United did sign someone like Rogers, maybe that no, that's another player that would work well with Manchester United. I think you could look at other players potentially. It's another option. If we're looking at bringing Mason Mount off the bench, don't forget Mason Mount was like a £60 million player. He's not playing a lot of games. I think Rogers could be an upgrade attacking wise on him. So again, players could come, not necessarily be considered the first team player in a certain position. They could still play 30 games next season. There's still a lot of football to play. But no, I do agree that there's when you look at good value deals, there's actually quite a lot of options out there, isn't there? I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the question is that you're talking about, Lehman. But if you got the second half of that one, I think if you're looking at trying to win things, like Mason Mount was quoted this morning as saying that he thinks Manchester United are close to being able to mount a challenge in the Premier League, but you need to have a much bigger squad. So the fact that we talk about Rodgers and say we've already got a player that can play in that position, you need to have like more than one player. Like you need to have a couple of players in every single position. So at the moment, like Dorgu could well be left back cover, could be winger cover, but we need multiple positions in every position, don't we? We need more players. Gregory says list of midfielders you think that you could be looking at what Stiller 48 million, Fernandez 43, Buwadi 43, Gomez 39. They're all actually kind of not bad prices, are they? The most expensive seems to be Tonali and Anderson. And again, it depends on. I think Manchester United have ruled themselves out of Anderson. They say Anderson is too expensive, and I was following that, so I think Manchester United will not be interested as well. I say Bruno demands win the Premier League. That's what the aim is. Like I know it seems unrealistic, but that's got to be the aim every season, isn't it? To pick up as many points as possible. And since January, we're talking. No, we're talking about a decent amount of games now. Since January, Manchester United have picked up more points than most of the other Premier League teams at the top. So to say we're not going in the right direction, we're clearly going in the right direction. Um, Cake says we're levels behind Champions League. I don't think we are. If you look at the Champions League, didn't Spurs get through the group stage? Didn't Newcastle get through the group stage? Like Newcastle nearly beat Paris Saint-Germain. So the fact that Paris Saint-Germain and Bayern Munich have a 5-4 game, I mean, shipping 4 goals at home isn't great either. So I think Arsenal and Atletico Madrid will still be a very tight game with whoever wins at Paris Saint-Germain and Bayern Munich. I don't think any Premier League club, if you finish third in the Premier League, I don't think you're far off like qualifying through the group stage easily. Like if you play a top team in the knockout stage, it's going to be difficult. But I think every single Premier League team got through the group stage, didn't they? And Newcastle got through the group stage or got to the playoff stage and got through that. So I don't think that the levels behind. You're probably levels away from winning it, but the group stage for Premier League clubs should be it should be something you're looking to get through, not too difficultly. So you're not sure. I think with Anderson, I don't think City need to spend that if they're going to get him. So no, I think this idea Man United will struggle in the Champions League. I don't really believe they'll struggle in the Champions League because we're looking at Aston Villa and Nottingham Forest as potentially one of them lifting the Europa League, and we're looking at saying every single clubs that struggled in the Premier League and did worse than us. We've already beaten Liverpool, Manchester City, and Arsenal this season, and Aston Villa, and they've all got through the knockout stage quite easily. So I don't think it's a problem. I think it's a problem trying to try and challenge for the Premier League and try and do very well in the Champions League is difficult. And with domestic cups, it's really difficult. Sebastian says, yeah, Newcastle make it to knockout stage. I think we can get to knockout stage fairly easily. Like we'll play a lot of teams that are going to be quite small. The group stage will be a mixture of a couple of good teams we have to play against and a lot of teams we should be beating. So I think it gets a different situation when you get to the knockout stage. So let's have a talk about preferred targets. So Gibbs, White, Rogers, Stiller, Fernandez for you. Do you think we should do a poll to just see what's the best option based on the like? Because I've got 4 names. I can never spell Unai correctly, but I'll try my best. So this is going to be the best option. Just a quick question as well. Unai, how much should he cost? Because if you're looking at him as the best option, so I'll put left wing because I'm assuming that's where they will play. I think they could play possibly other positions. So best left wing option. So this is one where just a straightforward comparison. So you got Rogers there. Let's put Rogers at 80 million as a. These are rough estimates as well. So you're looking at Diamonde, and he's quite popular, but he would be a bit more. So 85 million is the approximate valuation. LEAO is going to be cheaper, but he will be valued less, so 50 million for him. And how do you spell it? Can someone write Undayi in the chat, or if you know how to spell it? Because I'm trying to think. I know. Let's see if I've got it on a graphic because I can never remember how you spell Undayi. But these are going to be 3 of the options. So let's put that on screen. So IAY. Okay. So these are the options. How much does Undayi cost? Like any idea how much it's going to cost? Dabasa says 75 million. Is that in pounds? I've got the price in pounds with Rogers, Diamonde, Rafael. So is it 75 million pounds Dabasa you're going for? Because we could put that one. So should we put is 75 going to be Everton are quite greedy. So it could be that. So 70 or 75, what do people want? So I put 70. He's going to be less than Rogers, isn't he? So if anyone wants to comment on that before close the poll to say you got 75, are you going for, is that, just to basis, what currency are you going for at 75 million? Is it pounds? In which case we'll go 75 million pounds. Okay, we'll put 70, 75 in anyway. Similar to Mbeumo's price. So yeah, 70. Okay, so we got four options. You can vote on your best one just to see what the snapshot is. I don't think we've seen any other credible options that are going to be close to that one. We know for a fact that, based on all the journalists last night, this morning, etc., that Rogers is the top choice. So Rogers is Manchester United's preferred option, and Rafael is somewhat a backup. I think Diomande is a long shot given his age, but also Leipzig are not going to budge too much on the price because they're going to want to cash in. But there's a few options there, and if you're looking at what's the best option for Manchester United, I suppose you have to consider that we could be looking at potentially some sort of, I wouldn't say necessarily a swap deal, but we could be looking at a situation where Manchester United are able to make the deal. We are able to sell players this summer, so I'd be still thinking that. So if we sold the Glazers, like if we paid to lose the Glazers, that would be even better, wouldn't it? Um, and Kate's saying this is why you think a 5-year rebuild's what we're looking for, but you don't rate Kobe. You don't rate Kobe. Well, Kobe's going to be part of the squad next season. I think I would say for United, if you're looking at you're saying a 5-year rebuild. I think the thing is, if you get good players in, like we don't have to sign a first team goalkeeper. We can sign a backup player. We don't have to sign someone to replace Benjamin Sesko, but we could get a backup to Benjamin Sesko. We don't need to assign centre backs for the future. We've got Aiden Heaven and Yoro, and hopefully they'll get there. I think that the co-main is one player we got as well in midfield. I think if you start buying good quality players, then the rebuild starts taking shape quite quickly. If you have to keep selling players, like if you make mistakes like Agate and Xerxes, then it's going to be difficult to progress. But if most of your signings actually work out quite well, or you start getting a better hit rate from signings, I think the rebuild happens a little bit quicker. So my view on the rebuild is going to be that the more correct decisions you can make, then it could happen a lot faster than you think it's going to happen. So if United signed a mediocre midfield player like Agate or worse, then the rebuild, you're going to have to then replace him as well. So getting good quality players in is essential, and you can have a mix of younger players that maybe take time, but in 5 years' time, Aiden Heaven's going to be a monster if he keeps developing. So I think even a couple of years' time. So I think 5 years. In 5 years, Bruno Fernandes will have gone, and Bremo will be like 30. Cunha will be 30. So I think it's just going to be. I think 5 years, you have a completely different team for a lot of clubs. Like I think the average stay at a club for Premier League players must be like probably 7 or 8 years maximum, maybe. So how many players do we need for the left wing position? I would say over the season you need at least a couple, don't you? And maybe they're looking at having backup options that are versatile. I think with Manchester United, it's not about how many players in one particular position because we could be looking at players that can play left or play centrally as well. So or play left and play right. So the players that are linked won't necessarily be locked down to one position, which is probably a key factor as well. Welcome, Funchy, to the conversation. So you're saying that Rogers and Diamande are too expensive for you at 80 and 85 million respectively. If we can pay that in 4 or 5 installments, I would say honestly, like most transfers are paid in installments. Like it's quite. I don't think any transfers are paid upfront unless generally like release clauses might have to be, but you can still negotiate with that. So you can negotiate with release clauses, but sometimes they're paid a bit more upfront. The only time you get all the money at once is if you sell to the Saudi Pro League because they just have unlimited cash. But if you remember, Manchester United spent pretty big on Lukaku. We sold Lukaku for a lot of money, but we received installments over 4 or 5 years for Lukaku when we sold him. So every team will owe money. Every team, like Liverpool, will be paying off this transfer window. over 100 million a year for 5 years when they spent 500 million. Manchester United can spread any deals they've done over 5 years. If you consider last summer, we spent what 200 million, and if we're paying that over 4 or 5 years, that's like 40, 50 million pounds per year. And then we're gonna be selling players this season. If we sign maybe 300 million pounds of sign 300 million pounds of players, I think we transform our squad. That I think you could look at it and say three midfielders for under 200 million. If you do want to spend big on Rodgers and get a left back cover as well, maybe that's another 100 million. But players will be sold as well, and we could be looking at essentially selling about 90 to 100 million pounds at least of players. It's the money's going to come in. Okay, saying people assume all our transfers will hit. I don't think they will all hit, but I think we got 4 out of 4 last summer. I think we got, considering we only signed 4 players, Lamans was a definite hit. Cunha was a definite hit. I think Sesko will be considered a definite hit as well. And compare Sesko to other players like Walter Maida, similar sort of money. Isak cost more money, but other issues. And consider like Gyökeres, who was like similar sort of money as well. I think he's a much better deal. And actually, Mbeumo again was priced like Mbeumo cost the same as Gittins, and they were good. They were good signings. No, we need to do something similar, don't we? And Undai could be a little bit cheaper. So I would say take the evaluations with these evaluations that people are like putting out of articles as well. So the Diamonde costing 85, it doesn't mean he'll definitely cost that amount of money, but Leipzig under no pressure to sell him. Leipzig do get very good transfer fees for their players, so they're not going to budge on that one. I don't think at this point in time. I think Undai would be more reasonably priced, but don't forget Everton put a huge price tag on Branthwaite. I think if James Garner signed a new contract as well, they put a huge price tag on him. So any team in the Premier League team has teams have a lot of money, so they're going to be doing that. If you consider also Manchester United spend like just over say 207 million for those three front players, about 20 on Lamans. So United spent about 220 to 230 last season, and that was without any sort of Champions League money. So with Champions League money, approximately 90, 100 million pounds of that, and possibly prize money from finishing higher in the Premier League. I think that pays for essentially like another 100, 120 million pounds worth of signings. So they should be able to spend 300 million, and there shouldn't be any problem with that. But whether they decide to spend that amount of money, I have no idea. So let's just go for it again. If you just tuned in, we're just covering the news that's been discussed. There's loads of Rafa Leão news out there, way too much for my liking. I'm a bit. I don't think we're going to get Rafa Leão, but it's a bit disappointing that we're continually linked to him. I wonder whether this is just an indication to maybe say, just to put out there that there's other players we're linked to. If you remember last season, we were linked to quite a few players we didn't rate, and we didn't sign them, but we're always linked to players that we don't necessarily think are going to be good fits or good options for Manchester United. So I would say just bear in mind that we are linked to players that are disappointing, but the players we've actually ended up signing were actually pretty good. So just we have to just hope that the same plays out this summer. Which at the moment, most of the players we're linked to, I think, are good signings. So I wouldn't be too concerned. Red Time says Andai Rogers too similar to Cunha, and we should go for Diamonde, Goats, or Somerville. So I think this is going to be one where maybe Manchester United as a club, like there's a few people that would go for Rodgers and go for the Premier League players. Undai, I think, is obviously Undai could be a bit cheaper, so I think he's quite a good option. I do quite like him as a player, but I think Diamonde might be one that if we did go for Diamonde, it'd feel riskier, potentially a very interesting deal, but that would be Christopher Vivell. He'd be convincing Manchester United to spend an incredible amount of money unless Leipzig lower the price. So no, there's a few things to consider in that one for sure, isn't there? And yeah, I'll just say, Kate, like Ko Mainu. I know you're not a big fan of Ko Mainu, but he's going to improve. He's going to improve for sure. and say, let's take Rashford back, do a swap plus money for Rogers and reduce the fee, then I don't know. I don't know if Rashford would be interested in that, but this is a story from last night as well, being pushed out there saying Aston Villa monitoring Marcus Rashford. Emery does like the player. He would, they would definitely take him to Aston Villa. He did well for Aston Villa when he was playing. I think he was one of the players that stood out when they were playing against Paris Saint-Germain. They almost beat Paris Saint-Germain in one game. I think he's definitely a player that Aston Villa would want. But if Aston Villa are looking to replace Rodgers, and maybe they're looking for a short-term option as well, because I think Aston Villa at this point in time, they seem to want to balance the books a little bit. So it looks a bit like if they get Champions League football and they lose Rodgers, they're going to have to get somebody in, and maybe they see Marcus Rashford as being for them. It'd be quite a it'd be quite a cheap deal because you're just paying his salary. So it would probably be they cover the 80 million salary, and or it might actually, Rashford's salary might be a bit higher next season because of Champions League football, so his contract will give him a bit of a boost. So maybe if they're happy to pay 20 million salary or whatever Rashford will be taking home next season, in replacement for Rodgers while they then look for getting the next player in. I know it seems to be Aston Villa do this, don't they? They do seem to find good players. So they sold Don Duran for quite big money, and they're going to do it again with Rodgers, it seems. And if they don't do it with Rodgers, then maybe they'll be looking at trying to sell somebody else. Though I think at the moment it seems weird that they keep Ollie Watkins and they sell Don Duran. They might now sell Ollie Watkins, so they might now sell Rodgers. So I don't know. For Aston Villa, I think that Aston Villa might be storing up problems for themselves by doing this strategy of selling the younger players, which I think we can benefit from it, but I think it's quite risky. So let's go through the chat as well because a few new people in, and I've got a poll running just to gauge your opinion. I know that I've been like talking for quite a while, and I've got strong views, but I'm kind of disappointed that I see Rafa Leo is actually doing really well in the poll. I think forget the price; he's cheaper, but I don't know. It seems that Man United fans might like a bargain, or they rate Rafael a little bit higher than I do. I just see I see lots of concern with Rafael. Yeah, Solly. No, good to see you, Solly. I'm and say, why doesn't Bruno tell the club in private? I don't think that's how it works. I don't think that. I think Bruno Fernandes has said some very positive things about Matheus Fernandes at West Ham, which I mean, Bruno will know which players he rates. The thing is, it doesn't really matter which players you want to some extent because those players have to be available and want to move as well. So Bruno Fernandes could say he'd quite like Mbappe. I'm sure he'd like to pass the ball to Mbappe and see Mbappe finish. I'm sure we'd quite like to have Haaland as an option to pass to as well, but they're not going to happen. So if Bruno Fernandes is looking at signing players, I think that the thing that probably like Bruno's expectations of Manchester United are probably going to be quite similar to ours. Bruno Fernandes, if he wants to win the Premier League, and all Man United fans want to win the Premier League, Bruno Fernandes probably doesn't have as much time as somebody like, say, Diamonde or someone like Kobe Mainu. Kobe Mainu's got a long career ahead of him. There's not the urgency that Bruno Fernandes has been at Manchester United a decent amount of time. He might be looking at his career, and it might be very similar to a Teddy Sheringham, a Harry Kane, Robin van Persie. These players at some point they might consider jumping ship from a team that's actually close to challenging, but not quite there because they feel like the time is kind of running out a little bit. So it's difficult for United, and I know Bruno loves the club, but it's going to be difficult, isn't it? If Bruno Fernandes feels like right, I've got a couple of years at the top. I mean, he will know. I think he's got more time than people realise at the top. But it might start looking, thinking, I want to lift the Premier League. I want to lift the Champions League. He's too good a player not to be in those conversations, isn't he? As like of like one of the best players in the world. So it might be that he's genuinely looking at this one. And Vril says Rafael is class. That's not the problem. Problem is attitude and mindset. You're saying. I think when you've got a few players listed there, I think Sancho for me is like maybe an example of one of the worst mindsets. Yeah, that's. I think there could be a factor with that one that if he's got a bad, if he's got a bad attitude, and Somerville is a good shout, but that team has got some good players. I think Rafael does have like the most red flags of any deal I've seen us linked to, but and say inconsistency is that one. Yeah, I get that. I think Manchester United have scouted him recently. They'll probably scout him again. When you're looking at this sort of money as well, that there's no doubt that Rodgers is an easy one. Manchester United have watched him play a lot of times. We know what he's capable of. But I think the Rafael Leao maybe it is about seeing like there's a reason, isn't there, why you're looking at there's a reason why you're looking at why it's linked. He's obviously had got some ability, but there's been some issues with what's happened. I think you've got to be looking at very carefully whether the issue is like with Rafael himself, it's the situation, or is he going to be a player that brings a lot? Is he going to bring issues to the club, or is he going to bring another quality signing? Because there's no doubt he's got some quality, and I can't really understand what's happened recently. But it feels a bit like if there's problems with this with Rafael, maybe it's worth making sure these don't come into the club. So let's just go through. So unfortunately, I don't know, Malps. I don't know. I would say never say never, but it feels a little bit. It feels a bit unlikely if we're looking at next season. But a couple of seasons. Where's the bet said you're a fan of Liao. He would be ideal for our transition, heavy attack, can play along the front line as well. So do you feel like versatility is another? It's becoming like almost like a buzzword, isn't it? Like versatility also gives you a reason why he might be considered as well. Cake, you realise that when we're doing streams every day, we're not going to talk about midfield every stream. So we know the midfield needs fixing. It's the same way last season I talked about Cunha and Buemo for about a month, but I always wanted a goalkeeper, and we did get linked to about 50, didn't we, in the end? Yeah, yeah. I appreciate that. It doesn't matter how many left wingers we buy, midfield has still got need fixing. And if you're concerned about midfield, Agate's probably going to leave. Casemiro is gone. We only have Kobe Mainoo, so we're going to definitely get at least we're going to get at least three midfielders for sure. Like if we sell Agate, we have to get three. Otherwise, we can't have. I think anyone in their right mind knows you can't have three midfielders for two positions over a 50 plus game season, and it could even be more games, like with all the cup games. So United will have to get these players in, and it's almost certainly they're going to have to spend big on midfield. If they don't, what's going to happen is pretty much like last season. It's going to be very big spend on midfield, the same way we spend on the same way we spent on attack. We're almost certainly going to do exactly the same as well. I don't know. I can see I can see what you're saying, but again, I'm just saying that if you see it as part of an overall rebuild and play £80 million, it sounds like a lot of money, but it's not crazy money, is it? And so if you're looking at again, I think what you need to look at is not about just left winger, but we're looking about players that can play multiple positions. It's just about just think of it as another attacking option. So if you feel like we need a backup for say this this season, Cunha's missed a decent amount of games. We've seen Dorgu miss games. We've seen Mbeumo miss games. I think you just need to look at it and go, you need to get another attacking player. I think most of us said it'd be good to get a backup striker. I think the backup striker is effectively going to be a player that can play left wing as well. So it could. I don't know if Rogers would be considered a backup striker, but it could possibly be that you play Cunha there or Mbeumo there, and Rogers can play on the left in that situation. So I think it's about looking at this as well. And say you can't see past Kabashalia until then anyone who's just filling in. I don't know. I think so. I think obviously he's going to be the form player at the moment. I don't know what his goal scoring record is over the whole season. Obviously, he was very good on the weekend, but I would say I know people are really hyping up Paris Saint-Germain Bayern Munich, and it was a good game. But I think from a defensive point of view, there was very little defending going on. And against Atletico Madrid or Arsenal, you'd have to tighten up a little bit because I don't think you're going to score 5 goals to win a game in most matches. So they'll certainly have to sort out a few issues in the teams. So we're Man United. We should do both, Cake. Like we should be doing both. So no, do you know what I get the feeling? This conversation might be very different, like very different. If Manchester United drop three, say £200 million and get three midfielders, then I think the conversation will suddenly change and people will go, actually, we need a left wing, we need a left back, we need a goalkeeper cover. But again, I think these options can be bought quite cheaply. I think Kadioglu has got to be a shout for someone that can play left back or right back. I think he's going to be potentially a player that I really like Kadioglu, so hopefully he's in the mix still, but he is with Brighton. I think maybe if Man United can do some sort of deal with Kadioglu, that would be good. £200 million on midfield, a left winger that can play striker, and a versatile defender. I think that's going to be our window, and potentially we get one or two cheap deals. So Gregory said we could spend 500 million. Lacey's an option as well. How much? This is a question as well. How much money do you think Manchester United will spend? Don't say like net or anything. How much money do you think Manchester United will actually spend when we add all the transfers together this window? We spent nothing in January. We usually spend something in January. We probably had £70 million to spend on Belieber last summer. We did have like at least 65, 70 to spend on Semenyo in January. So we had money for those two players. Obviously, the financial records are moving in the right direction. The wage bill's moving in the right direction. We got contracts going. We've got players selling. How much money do you think we can spend? Like, are we going to see a record transfer window? And yeah, I think Genghis is right. There's a reason why some deals might take a bit longer. And it's about probably due diligence, looking at the personalities, looking at the profiles, working out whether this is a good signing for Manchester United. So if you're looking at it, how much money do you think Manchester United will spend overall? Like how much do you think? Like if you had to guess, because if Manchester United didn't spend over, I think at least over 250. Like I think we're going to spend. I think our spend will be over 300. Not loads, but I think 300. If you're going to spend £200 million on, actually, or maybe close to 300. I think something along those lines, and we might get more for it than people realize. So maybe about 300 million, about 200 or maybe about 180 on midfield as a rough average of like £60 million per signing. And I think if you take 180 and I think 120 million possibly gets you one expensive signing, one cheaper signing, and maybe we're going to go for some sort of bargain signing there as well. So I think potentially six players and three in midfield, maybe 120 spread across the other three, with one being quite expensive. So I'm thinking about that one as well. So my guess is about 300 million, and that's including obviously we're going to make sales. I think 200 million to 250 is pretty much the standard transfer window these days for most clubs near the top. And if United are looking to actually do a few more deals because we didn't get as many deals done last summer as we wanted to, we didn't get a deal or two that we wanted to do in January. Like we wanted to do some menu, but we didn't get it done. So we are looking to sign a player that's going to play on the left or centrally as well. So we are looking to sign a Semenyo type player as well. So you should advise fans to show patience and not panic. Well, I don't know. At this point in time, no one's got deals done, but no one's actually got deals already signed. There's lots of speculation. The fact that I think sometimes people criticize Manchester United because players want to go elsewhere, that you can't really change what players look at. Like we got lucky last season because we didn't get Champions League, and the two players we tried to sign that wanted Champions League football were Gyökeres and Delap. And in the end, we didn't get those players, but we also went for the right mentality of player, and that is also key as well. So if you're looking at, say, the players we got sort of shortlisted, I think it's way too early to actually pick, like, to decide about Diamonde. I don't know where he fits in. People are questioning Rafael Leao's mentality. Again, I don't know whether it's unique to the situation he's in. But it's clearly, if you look at ability, these three players do have a lot of ability. And Rafa Leao's got like loads of talent. He was an exceptional player a few years ago. So there's definitely a player in there. If he's motivated, and again, like joining Manchester United is it's one of the bigger clubs in the world as well. So he's already played on for a historically big club. But I think Italian football's been a little bit regressing in recent years. The other players, I think Unai looks really good when we play against Everton. He's always a danger for them. I do like him as a player, and I think Rogers is definitely there in terms of like top quality players that are exciting to watch. And again, I think with Rogers, that when he's playing well, people put, he got noticed because he scored some fantastic goals. But you also have to factor in that after Rodgers goes on a big run, teams do factor this in, and they don't have loads of options in attack. Aston Villa, I know they got some good players in that team, but I think you can look at it and say with United, if Rodgers is in the team and we've got Cunha and Buemo or Bruno or Sesko in our team as well, Rodgers will get more space anyway because there's more attacking players to take account of. So it could be that he actually looks better at Manchester United. So I wouldn't worry about the financial situation because if these deals are going to be amortized over the books over 4 or 5 years, then it sounds like a lot, but don't forget Manchester United's. If we sign some of these younger players, we don't have to replace them in 2 years' time. So this is something where I think United can gradually build the squad up, and we're not going to have to sign Cody Mainer's replacement. We're not going to have to sign a goalkeeper to replace Lamans, are we? We're just looking at a backup one or bringing back an academy one. So if we get these deals done sensibly, we don't have to actually, and also the wage structure is actually more sensible. So your left winger has to be. El Malas says, Randy, how much would he cost? Do you reckon, Randy? Then we'd have to see. No, we'd have to see if there's links to him, we can discuss him. But I haven't I haven't seen any stories linking Manchester United to him. But no, looking at the poll, if you just tuned in, please vote on the poll because I want to get a snapshot of what people think. I can only see that Rafael Leao is leading at the moment. So if you want to vote for a different one, please do that. So because I can't see the result until I close the poll. So I'm going to give it like a bit more time just to get everybody's opinion. I'm not sure who my top choice would be based on the prices, but maybe if something happens and if I was gonna if Diamonde was cheaper, I would be actually tempted. But I do feel it's something that if we're trying to if we're trying to build around Bruno Fernandes, I think Rafa Leao and i.e. Rodgers are probably the better options as players that would be a bit more effective over the next couple of seasons. But Diamonde feels like an Ineos signing, doesn't it? Where we have to then be somewhat patient because he's going to be someone that maybe improves in the future. So looking at if you got some comments on, I know people are saying midfield, 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 and maybe at 1 p.m. today we'll cover midfield stories if there's news on that. There's apparently just to let people know. Apparently, there's some breaking news that was posted by IndyCar. Apparently, Manchester United. There's some story at 8 p.m. this evening. So because I'm doing a live stream with Kieran on this channel, I might have to make one of those thumbnails that has like a silhouette, and we will probably change the thumbnail as the stream starts and work out that what's happening. But there might be some indication that Man United are going to make their first offer or at least first moves to try and get one player signed. So I'm wondering whether it's going to be actually breaking news and something different, or whether it's going to be something we suspect is going to happen. My guess is Belieber, but we'd have to see. There's a lot of people. I think Manchester United did have like one of the biggest, number of employees in the Premier League and actually in Europe. So they probably needed to reduce numbers slightly. They probably went too far, but no, there's definitely been. I think there's been a bit too much cost cutting. Is he still around? So no, I think it's 50-50. I think IndyCar has actually been sold to a group of journalists. So the source that the people that owned it. Yeah, the people that owned IndyCar a few years ago, it's now been bought by journalists. I don't know who owns it, but they do seem to post out a bit more information recently that does end up actually happening. So they did post like they made some easy calls, but they did post things about I think who it was. They posted things about Amram before he got sacked, saying he was going to go. They posted things about other managers before they went. So they've been like fairly accurate recently. But again, they're kind of a bit hit and miss. But I'm just streaming at that sort of time, so we'll probably cover whatever they're talking about if it makes any sense. I'm guessing it's going to be a Bieber story, but we'll have to see. You never know. Say the United stand bought by Media Group. Yeah, when things get big, they're getting purchased now. So I think independent fan channels and independent news is becoming less and less. So I definitely think there's a change. I don't watch the United stand loads, but there's definitely been a change in the way it's presented, and there's definitely a softening towards certain things they used to say. So yeah, there's definitely going to be. I think the United stand will be different because now it's owned by a media group. So I think some of the things they said about players, some of the things they said about the owners, I don't think they're going to be able to say some of the same things they did, or at least less of it. So I don't know. If you watch the channel, you might have noticed it change a little bit, but it's. I think people have noticed it and said there's certain things they say. But any thoughts on the players we discussed? Would you be happy with a swap deal? Well, and when I said about swap deals, like the obvious one for Aston Villa, it's Rashford. But with Rafa Leao, this is one potential where it could be the three players looking at trying to swap for him, and this is coming out from Italian sources. So I think there's definitely there's definitely a little bit of legs in the story. I did say this because I'm not really in favour of Rafa Leao as a signing. I don't tend to be talking about him too much, but I couldn't avoid it this morning because there were so many stories about it. And it does seem to be that in terms of like swap deal for Rafa Leao, it could be Xerxes, could be Agate, could be Rashford. So you've got three players there that are seriously linked. This is the story I saw actually. So this is BBC Sport as well. So it's mainstream media in the UK saying that the swap deal could be like three United players linked. And I'm guessing like take Rashford out because Rashford might be a difficult one. But I think Xerxes and Agate, they're very strong options there for AC Milan, and it could potentially be that this deal costs hardly anything. So if you're looking at say 30 million for Xerxes, 25 million for Agate, if you're saying to me like, do you think Rafael is a good deal? I'd be like a bit skeptical because I'm not sure how well it'll work out. But if you effectively get Rafael for Agate plus 25 million, suddenly it's like, right, well, what's the worst that can happen? As long as you put him on a sensible contract, so if it doesn't work out, don't make him a crazy offer. Don't overpay, and maybe look at a sensible deal. Then it's not bad, is it? It's not too bad considering what potentially could be the upside. So again, I think Rafael has got a point to prove, and if he's got the right mentality, then that I could get behind that. So there are a few reasons why I could get behind that. But that's why I think it's worth considering. And Manchester United looking at that, we can't send. I don't think we can send Agate or Xerxes to Aston Villa. So this is why it's probably the most likely swap deal, isn't it? So if we're looking at it, Xerxes also linked to Juventus. I think Agate also possibly linked to Juventus as well. So no, not the worst option on the table, but again, I think I prefer I don't know. It's kind of 50-50, isn't it? Because I'm just worried that when we sign players like Anthony, Sancho, Garnacho, and then the way people look at Rashford's last year at Manchester United, I just worry that we're going in the right direction with our player profiles and our mentality and our squad kind of thing. So I feel like we're going in the right direction, and I'm just a bit concerned whether he would actually fit. But I'm just a bit yeah, when things start working out well and you see some positives and you go, right, the squad seems to be good. We seem to have a good mentality. We've got, everyone's getting on. And I think that's a good thing. And I just think, is there a danger we disrupt it a little bit as well? So, yeah, I got nothing against Xerxes. I don't think Xerxes really fits what Manchester United actually need to do. I don't think he's like got a quick enough game for the Premier League in terms of decision making and passing and pressing, finishing. I don't think he fits into what we're trying to do. I think maybe it would be like a second striker. Probably you need to put him in Bruno's position to be effective. But I think if you drop him in Serie A, you could see him as linking like midfield to attack. Maybe I just don't think he's going to be working in our team. Again, it's not Xerxes' fault. It's we probably shouldn't have signed him. So let's have a look at the poll. Rafael is still winning. So 30 seconds if you want to vote in the poll. Yari says every player is a gamble. Rogers could be a flop, could be amazing. Liao could be a flop, could be amazing. Yeah, Mbuemo and Cunha have been good, haven't they? And I think Mbuemo, if Mbuemo had carried on the second half of the season like he started the season, I think we were talking about an amazing signing. But no, a big upgrade on what we had the season before. But I think still improvements been made. I think Cunha is definitely stepped it up a little bit more recently and been somewhat of a key player, I think. So Andy says you see LEAO is more of a flair player, Rogers is a team player. Yeah, that's probably the apprehension I've got regarding Rafa LEAO. I think there's no doubt he's got ability, but I don't know. I don't know if Rafa LEAO is going to be someone that digs in when the going gets tough, and that's kind of what we need as well. So we get that from Cunha, that if things get difficult, Cunha will dig in, you'll fight for the team. So best left wing option, and this one is actually very close. Unai gets a decent 20% of the vote, considering we didn't really talk about him at all. Rogers gets 23%, Diamonde gets 26%, LEAO gets 31%. So given the number of votes, it couldn't really be loads closer, could it? So, and Rafael LEAO wins, but it's only by 5% over Diamonde, who does seem to be an exciting target, and Rogers, they're only 8% behind him as well. So, I guess this is pretty divided, isn't it? If you put four names up there, they're all getting close to 25%. So, um, yeah, when people say the fan base is divided, I mean, this isn't too toxic, is it? I think people just have different opinions. And I think Unai could potentially be a mixture of being cheaper than Rogers, but not necessarily too much of a drop off as well. Yeah, the stream's not going to go on for too much longer, Gregory, so don't worry. I'd say if anyone's got any questions in the last 5 minutes or statements they want to make regarding these players, because I think I will be trying to keep streams to roughly about an hour. We will be live at 1 p.m., so we will have news to cover then. Hopefully, we might make a more of a focus on midfield for just to try and make it a bit different as well. But to be honest, when I looked this morning, there was literally no information out there about anything apart from Rafa Morgan Rogers. There was so many different stories about it, so I thought I'd just put them all in one stream, and I think they're all linked a little bit, aren't they? They're all linked about different things. Welcome, Rob. You're on holiday there, Rob. So enjoy your holiday, Rob. But if you've got some thoughts on the players we talked about today, I'll just give it say yeah, I just see this. Every player is a gamble, isn't it? But I feel like we're actually gambling in the right direction, if that makes sense. Like, I think the players we're looking at, it feels like most of them have got more upsides. I mean, they're already playing well, the right age. They seem to have the right mentality. So I think if you get some of those things right, for a start, if you get a player that's the right age that can develop and can improve, then whatever they did in the last season, they can build on that and progress forward, which is good. If you're getting a player that's going to be potentially on the downward in their career, that's always going to be a bit risky. And if we're looking at players that have no injury issues as well, that's a key thing. So no injury issues, decent form, playing in the Premier League, younger player, enthusiastic to join Manchester United. And Roger said that he's happy with Villa, but he would love to join Manchester United if there was an opportunity. He's not ruling out the move. He's got some preferences in where he'd like to play positionally. So I don't think I don't think it feels like too risky. There's a lot of good factors, isn't there? No transfers 100%, but if you get rid of some of the obvious errors, like everybody looked at Agate, and he was getting benched by Paris Saint-Germain. So if Morgan Rogers and Rafael Leao were not getting in the team, and you'd look at it and think, actually, why are we even linked to this person? But the fact that he's been one of Aston Villa's best players this season is key. Scored two amazing goals against us as well. Another plus point for him. I'd say Ineos will point to 288 million in transfers that need to be paid by April 2027, but it's smoke and mirrors as they will stifle payments for this year's signings too. I think 275 might be their ceiling. I think Ineos want to do things on the cheap for sure, but invariably they have to. You can't underspend with the other top teams as well. So you can't look at that and you can't look at that and say we can't spend because if you don't spend, then you're going to miss out on Champions League football. So you've got to make sure you look at that one. Say, can anyone? Yeah, I don't think anyone. I don't think anyone's. Well, I'm reading the chat regarding this one, but no, it's his business, and he sold his own business. I don't think anyone's actually. I don't. I don't really mind what he does at all. I think people were commenting that maybe the content's changed because he's got a different owner. So I think it's a little bit like if a business gets bought by somebody else, the brand, the marketing, everything's there, isn't it? Everything's in place, everything looks familiar, but it does have a different person that makes the decisions. I think that's what people are looking at. So in terms of independent football fans, that it used to be, it is now owned by a big media corporation. So it is potentially different as well. So I think it's the same as IndyCar was the website I was talking about, the Twitter account. It used to be posting out random stuff, but now IndyCar effectively it had a very large Twitter following, and it got sold to some journalists about 2 years ago. So IndyCar does tend to post out stuff that comes from sources that are linked to journalists. So again, I think people look at it as being they probably over sensationalize it and they probably overhype it a bit, but the credible sources are there. So they got credible sources, but then maybe they present it in a sensational way, which makes it look a bit suspicious. But yeah, I saw that. Do you think Nico Paz is going to do it well at the World Cup, JDC? Because maybe that'll be he can showcase his ability then and force a big move. But I think maybe Man United are looking at players that are in the Premier League already as less risky. But I think like maybe if Nico Paz has a good World Cup, maybe that puts him in the spotlight. But again, I think Manchester United are looking to do some of their deals before the World Cup happens. That's why we're looking at some of these players that we already know quite well. But no, it's a good point. It's a good point. But I think if you're looking at these sort of players, there's no doubt that Manchester United will be well aware of Nico Paz, and they will be extensively scouting all these players as well. Maybe maybe Nico Paz is too expensive, and maybe there's a reason why they don't want to sign him. I don't know. But if anyone's got any final questions before we wrap up, and for people that just tuned in, we did a vote on the poll. We read through the result about 10 minutes ago, so you can have a look at that. But I was a bit surprised, but it was very close. I thought genuinely when we do a stream and we got a person on the thumbnail and we're talking about him for most of the stream, he tends to be the winner in the poll. But it looks like fans are somewhat slightly divided, but again, there's a long way to go. I think at this point in time, I think Manchester United are just considering all the options available. They're going to be still scouting these players. Like they sent scouts to watch Rafael Leao. They'll have people looking at Diamonde as well to see if they think he's worth the risk at this stage in his career. And they'll have looked at Rogers all season. But I think the reason why we see more Rafael Leao stories recently is because we knew we were well aware of like the Rogers interest for a while. He's been a good player in the Premier League this season. And so Genghis says people need to understand the financial mess Ineos inherited. Sancho, so huge investment, walking away for zero in the summer. He should be a star, peak player at his age. Yeah, exactly. I think it takes a couple of years to get these deals done, doesn't it? And if you think about it, in a year's time, Manchester United won't have Casemiro's contract. They won't have Sancho, Rashford, Anthony. Who else? Garnacho. These players will all have gone, and they're going to be replaced by players like Sesko and Buemo, Cunha, maybe Rogers. Um, maybe we're going to get some other players in midfield, and all these players will be have been replaced, and that'll be about 2 years, 2.5 years of Ineos in charge. And I think if you then go another year and fast forward. So I think things take time, but I think you'd have to say there's definitely steps in the right direction. Like I think most fans would have to acknowledge that there's steps in the right direction regarding signings. Like they've been way better the last 18 months, but it's going to take time. Like nobody thought we're going to fix this in 1 year. The fact we could be finishing third in the league, I think must be above people's expectations. Like the expectation must be to finish, I don't know, Europa League, maybe that sort of position, and maybe build towards this the season after. So if we get Champions League football in one season, I think it's going to be. Um, yeah, I was actually looking because he's on loan, isn't he? So Real Madrid have already officially informed Como that they will exercise their 7.8 million buyback clause this summer. Okay, that might be a reason then. So JDC, that maybe Nico Paz, maybe there's like zero chance of him coming to Manchester United. So that's why there's nothing about him in the media. So no, if Real Madrid get him, then so he's got a valuation of 65, 70 million. But no, doing well at Como. But again, Como are in the Italian league, so you'd have to also say that's quite a soft league. So it's still going to be a bit of a step up to join the Premier League and replicate that. But no, maybe in the World Cup, one to look out for and see how he does. So yeah, this is probably the next season, isn't it? So the next season will probably be Luke Shaw, Mason Mount, and I think what they might be looking as you could be looking at maybe Mason Mount gets replaced by Rogers, possibly Luke Shaw replaced by Kadioglu. So maybe United are looking forward to. We could well be looking at replacements for these players, but getting him in the team this season. So maybe in terms of actually the rebuild, maybe getting people like Rogers or Rafael Leao, maybe they'll still fix midfield, but maybe this is a way of Manchester United actually doing things a bit quicker. So it could be a positive that we're looking for more than fixing midfield, and maybe that's the one. Anyway, guys, I'm going to end it here. We'll be back live at 1 p.m. Hopefully, there's some breaking news or something to talk about at that point in time. But if you're able to click on the socials link at the top of the stream, there is links to the Discord, to the Facebook group, and Twitter. So if you want to reach out to people or post information on there, and thanks to Gaz who joined the Discord last night as well, posted a couple of things which I thought was quite interesting on a player he thinks is a good option. He plays for Stuttgart. He says he's very similar to Michael Carrick. And I think the Statman Dave did a piece on him, a video on him. So that's on the Discord if you want to check that out as well. But thanks, guys, and we'll see you guys in the next one.